The majority of people who take the GRE fundamentally do not understand how the test works. If you don't know this, there's a really good chance you're scoring lower than you should be. I'm Erika with Target Test Prep, and today we're going to answer the question, how is the GRE scored? With everything you need to know about GRE scoring and the GRE algorithm, along with some of my top GRE strategies for maximizing your score. Starting with the basics, as you probably already know, the GRE score is composed of 3 different scores. One for the quantitative measure, one for the verbal measure, and one for the analytical writing measure. The quantitative and verbal measures are scored in whole point increments from 130 to 170, while the analytical writing measure is scored in half point increments from 0 to 6. Now, it's pretty common to see people sharing their total score out of 340, which is derived from adding their quant and verbal scores together, but this isn't technically an official score. ETS does not present this number as part of an official score report. It's also not particularly important to graduate programs, since graduate programs typically value certain sections more than others. You can check out my What is a Good GRE Score in 2025 video for information on how to research what different programs are looking for in terms of measure scores, but that isn't really the point of this video. Now, I'll talk about scoring for analytical writing later in the video, but for now I'll focus on quant and verbal, since that's what most people and most programs care about more. To understand quant and verbal scoring, you have to understand the test algorithm. The first section in both quant and verbal is the same for everyone, with a mix of easy, medium, and hard questions. The second section, however, is not the same for everyone. The second section comes in 3 difficulties: an easy second section, which has primarily easy questions with some medium questions and a few hard questions; a hard second section, which has primarily hard questions with some medium questions and a few easy questions; and a medium second section, which has primarily medium questions and some questions across easy and hard. This yields about a 60% overlap in question composition between each successive second section difficulty. We'll come back to that later. Now, this is the important part. Which second section you receive for each measure is determined by your raw score on the first section of the same measure. The more questions you get wrong in the first section, the easier a second section you receive. Which second section you receive in each measure determines your score band. An easy second section guarantees a measure score on the low end of the scale between 130 and the low 150s. A hard second section guarantees a measure score on the high end of the scale between the high 140s and 170, and a medium second section guarantees a measure score in the middle of the scale, between the high 130s and high 150s for quant, or between the low 140s and low 160s for verbal. Your raw score across the 2 sections, or how many questions you get wrong in the measure overall, determines where in each score band you fall. The more questions you get wrong, the lower your score within the limits of the score band. Now, the overlap between these bands means that technically you can get a lower score with a hard second section than you can with a medium second section, or with a medium second section than with an easy second section. But because of the question composition overlap we talked about earlier, scoring worse on a more difficult second section than you would have with a less difficult second section is highly, highly unlikely outside of random chance or a timing disaster. In almost all cases, you can get more questions wrong on a more difficult second section and still score higher than you would have getting fewer questions wrong on a less difficult second section. I dig into this more in my 6 strategies that do not work video, so check that out if you're skeptical. So what strategies can we take from this? Primarily, to get the most difficult second section you can. This has the highest impact on your potential score, as getting a medium difficulty second section locks you out of a top score, just as getting an easy second section locks you out of an above average score. Now, some people think that aiming for a harder second section means practicing harder questions, but that's not true. The best way to increase your chances of getting a harder second section is to use your study to address the easiest questions you're getting wrong. Not only because they'll be the easiest to fix, but also because you won't see many harder questions in the second section unless you're getting the easier questions in the first section right. All right, let's narrow in a little further and talk about raw scores. There are a lot of ways to get a question wrong. If you submit the wrong answer, you get the question wrong. If you don't submit an answer, you get the question wrong. If you submit an almost correct answer or a partially correct answer, you get the question wrong. All of these are equivalent. There's no partial credit, there's no penalty for guessing, you either get the point or you don't. And importantly, it's just 1 point. Regardless of the question's difficulty or how many parts the question has, each carries the same weight and contributes equally to your raw score on the section and on the measure. This, of course, supports the previously discussed study strategy of prioritizing the easiest questions you're getting wrong, but we can also take away some additional test-taking strategies. First, make sure you put in a guess for every question. If you leave a question blank, you have a 0% chance of getting a point for that question. If you guess randomly on a standard 5-answer choice select one multiple choice question, you have a 20% chance of getting a point. If you can eliminate one answer, that goes up to a 25% chance. Another answer, a 33% chance. If you get it down to 2 answers, a 50% chance. Leaving a question blank is leaving points on the table, so you should never, never do it. Second, spend more time on questions you're likely to get right and less time on questions you're likely to get wrong. Strategically moving on is one of my 3 tips to improve your score fast for a reason. I talk more about it in that video, as well as how one of my students used it to increase his score by 20 percentile points in 2 weeks. But the net result is that by saving questions that you're likely to spin your wheels on until the end of the section, you maximize the number of questions you get right by avoiding overinvesting in questions that aren't likely to net you any points. Now, notably, this isn't about question difficulty. Some test takers get hung up on a question that they think should be easy and end up spending a bunch of time on it just to get it wrong. This is a mistake, 1, because question difficulty is actually pretty difficult to judge and the easy question may actually be very hard, and 2, because whether it's easy or not, getting it wrong will have the same impact on your score. What matters is whether you burn a bunch of time getting that question wrong versus investing that time into getting other questions right. This logic can also be extended to guessing on different question formats. While your chances of guessing correctly on a 1 blank text completion question are 1 in 5 or 20%, your chances of guessing correctly on both blanks of a 2 blank text completion are 1 in 9 or just over 11%. Your chances of guessing correctly on all 3 blanks of a 3 blank text completion are even worse at 1 in 27 or less than 4%. You have a 6.6 chance of guessing right on sentence equivalents, a 3.2% chance of guessing right on a 5-answer choice select one or more, and a near 0% chance of guessing right on numeric entry. And there are more question formats and variations on those question formats that have different probabilities, but the moral of the story is, even when guessing, invest time and effort relative to your chances of getting the question right. Test takers tend to spend more time on questions with more complex formats, despite the fact that they are unlikely to be rewarded for it. Instead, be critical. If you have a decent chance of guessing correctly, spend some time using process of elimination to make an educated guess. But if process of elimination isn't a viable strategy, save it for absolute last. And then before we talk about analytical writing, I want to zoom back out to quant and verbal measure scores. I mentioned earlier that the score band for the middle difficulty second section is different for quant versus verbal, and you'll notice that the other score bands aren't exactly the same either. And that's a byproduct of the fact that measure scores are not equivalent. GRE test takers overall tend to score higher on quant than on verbal, meaning that percentiles for quant are relatively shifted down. So while a 164 represents a 93rd percentile for verbal, it's only a 63rd percentile for quant. Similarly, while a 169 quant, 161 verbal might seem to indicate a worse performance on verbal, it represents an 86th percentile in both measures. Additionally, the percentile change from one point to another varies wildly, both between measures and across the score range within each measure. On quant, a 159 and 160 are 3 percentile points apart, while a 169 and 170 are 15 percentile points apart. Conversely, on verbal, a 159 and 160 are 4 percentile points apart, while a 169 and 170 are less than 1 percentile point apart. Takeaway, don't take measure scores at face value. Percentiles are a far better indicator of performance. You can use them to compare between measures if you're looking for a balanced score, to compare between test or practice test attempts to get a clear view of your improvement, as well as to compare between your scores and scores of admitted students at relevant programs to see how you stack up. Finally, let's talk analytical writing. The analytical writing measure consists of a single analyze an issue task where test takers are asked to respond to a prompt with a written essay. That essay is scored from 0 to 6 in whole point increments by both a human rater and an E-rater, where scores 4 and above represent increasing levels of success in addressing the prompt, and scores 3 and below represent increasing flaws and deficiencies. If the scores produced by the human and E-rater differ by a point or less, the scores are averaged to produce a measure score from 0 to 6 in half-point increments. If the scores produced by the human and E-rater differ by more than a point, the essay response is further evaluated by another human rater as a quality control measure. Now, reviewing the specific criteria on which the various raters score essays is a little beyond the scope of this video, but the ETS website has a really useful scoring guide as well as sample essay responses at each score level along with rater commentary. These materials are golden, and in-depth review of them is my #1 study tip for analytical writing. Like with Quant and Verbal, it's worth looking at your specific programs to determine what analytical writing score you should be aiming for, especially if those programs have anything to do with writing. But a good rule of thumb is that a 4 or above is enough to not raise red flags. And while your analytical writing score will generally never be the deciding factor on your application, a score below 4 may be a knock against you. And that's all you need to know about GRE scoring. If you have any questions about anything we talked about today or requests for future videos, leave them in the comments. And if this video helped you, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more like it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.